Eamon Khan here, 4 seconds out with the one and only have rival gloves will travel, Russ Anber. Russ, good to see you. How you doing?
Oh, thanks, Eamon. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm a little bit tired, but the boxing game keeps moving. You've got to keep moving with it. And it's good to see you in Altrincham. I don't know my geography, but it's maybe somewhere away from Manchester, I think 10 miles or so out. But any difference from, well, I don't know, have you spotted or found a place to play your favorite game?
Yeah, I stayed in Manchester for the first 3 days I was here, right by the snooker club at the Stephen Charles. So I played there, and now get closer to the fight, come to the Altrincham, and now we're set up here in the hotel here, and weigh-ins tomorrow and the fight Saturday, so I'm looking forward to it.
2 fighters you got on the card, you helping to assist. What have you seen in terms of their progression in the sport? Both of them starting off trying to climb the ladder, get to the top, but in the embryonic stages.
Yeah, for sure. I think both Nelson and Jack are two prospects that I think we're going to hear a lot of in the future, and I think the special or the wow factor of the power that Jack Turner can generate, at such a small weight, and he's hurting middleweights, I think is something for everybody to go, wow, what is that? I got to say, and in my 46 years in this game, going on 47, he's got to be one of the hardest punchers I've ever seen pound for pound in all my years.
You seem to have an affinity with Scousers. What is it about maybe people from Canada and Scousers?
Well, I don't know if it's about people from Canada and Scousers. I just have a good relationship with the guys there, and it all started with the Smith brothers, of course. So and I work well with Joe McNally. I really like being in the corner with him. It's a nice vibe. We have a good connection in the corner. We see things the same way. We respond the same way to the way the things the fighters do. So I like being in the corner, and I'm really proud that he's used me. And I've been happy working with Scott Hughes and working with Jack Turner in his corner throughout his career. It's been kind of special, and there's no big money yet, but hopefully the big money and the big title fights are coming soon for him.
Speaking of special, I saw you in the corner of Shakur Stevenson when he fought Williams Bader, and that was a brilliant performance where he stood his ground, where people have kind of labelled the thing of him moving around, which is part of the game, of course, but he's chose to stand his ground, showed a different facet of his game, and got the victory. What do you think of Shakur Stevenson against Bader?
Bro, I got the chance to watch Shakur, of course, as an amateur, but I saw him spar on 2 separate occasions Lomachenko, when Lomachenko was getting ready for Guillermo Rigondeaux. And he came in, and I could see right away that this kid is special. And when you have that kind of defensive ability, when you're able to stand in the pocket right in your ground and make a guy miss literally by inches and be there to fire back with surgeon-like precision, this kid can dominate the sport pretty much for as long as he wants, as long as he stays disciplined and focused on what he's doing and continues with the fundamentals. This guy is almost a textbook fighter. Like, if you wanted to build a fighter, footwork, position, defense, movement, balance, speed, combinations, everything you can think of about boxing, this kid's got it. There's a special, as a trainer, I look at that stuff and I say, this is textbook. This is what the sweet science is all about. And I mean that sincerely. I think he's just a phenomenal talent who's exploited his boxing skills and really made it, showed everybody what the sweet science really is.
Do you know who he won't be fighting next? Gervonta Davis.
I know. It's. I have no words, bro. I have no words. I cannot even explain, this nonsense of a world that we're living in, that stuff like this is allowed to happen. I just don't get it. We're in an era of a talent-laden lightweight division. Talent-laden, a lot of great fighters. This could have been a group of fighters that technically could have been put in any era in boxing and been exciting to watch fight. And matchups should be made, and we're doing everything but making those matches. It's embarrassing to the sport. It's disgusting, man. I can't even begin to express how ridiculous that is that's happening.
Let me play devil's advocate a little bit here. I always hear the argument made that, look, Muhammad Ali fought Antonio Inoki and he entertained the fans, and that happened in those days, so this sort of thing can happen in these days. What would you say to just flat out, no, not interested?
Muhammad Ali's Muhammad Ali. Please don't compare somebody else to Muhammad Ali. That's laughable to say that. Ali fought everybody in the division twice. Please, it's not even comparable. I remember when Gervonta Davis was coming up, and they wanted to make the fight with Loma. They said, oh no, we're not ready for Loma now. Okay, Loma's not there anymore, and you're still not making the big fights. There's still all kinds of fights to be made, and it's not happening. And I guess, this is the era where everybody's just interested in cashing the check. That's it. Any way they can find an easy way to cash a check, whether it's by fighting inferior opponents or being a freak show or whatever, and they can do that, that's what they're doing. So it is the world now.
Is there an argument for it to be said that if there's a balance with the undercard and the undercard is strictly traditional boxing fights, then it maybe balances out a little bit?
Why? Why does that make it balance out when you have, one of the premier lightweights in the world, and somebody who's a great talent, a great fighter, should be fighting other great lightweights in the division, not cruiserweights? I don't get it.
Well, let's move on to more prodigious talents as well, getting in the traditional route of boxing. Moses Itauma took on Dillian Whyte. A lot of talk about how the fight would end up, and for the most part, or for exactly how the media kind of said it would end early, and it did end early, but Moses was impressive in doing it. What did you see Moses do in the ring to set up that finish?
I look at Moses different from the way everyone else looks at Moses, or maybe I should say not everyone, but the way the layman looks at Moses. I'm looking at what is the potential and can he do something in the division. And when I see him, I see a technically flawless fighter, whose skill set is right up there with anybody in the division. Technically he's as sound as anybody in the division. His IQ, what he does in the ring, the ability in which he does it, the speed, the power. As a trainer, I'm looking at the fundamentals, and he's got it all.
Obvious question here is if he's ready for Oleksandr Usyk. Turkey Al-Sheikh said that's the fight he wants to see him in.
Well, it might be the fight you want to see. It's going to be up to his team to say, is he ready? Not just is he ready to cash a check, but is he ready to fight that? And I'm not sure that you can say unequivocally yes, because he hasn't had the rounds, he hasn't had the experience yet, so you can't with conviction say, yeah, he's ready. He might be, but we don't really know until he does that, But he is absolutely one of the most gifted guys in the division for sure.
Joe Parker, Hrgovic, Franklin was mentioned. Franklin's in the fight right now with Ditchko, but do you think those are more sensible options for him as Zhang, that type of opponent next before he gets to Usyk?
You mean for Itauma? Oh, look, that's the movement they have to consider within his team, and I don't get to see him in the gym, so it's hard to say. And you want to know what are the weaknesses, what style does he have a problem with, how do you want to teach him those rounds. When I was working, I'll tell you a story. When I was working with Deontay Wilder, and I was with Wilder for about 6 years, and I have a very close relationship with JD's, and we'd strategize a lot on what to do with Deontay, and we're saying, look, we're not getting the rounds in a fight, we're not getting it because he's blasting guys out, so we got to make sure we're getting rounds in the gym. So while the regular media and the regular layman said, oh, we don't know about Wilder, can he go the distance, what can he do, does he still have power late in the fight, blah, blah. We knew, because we answered those questions in the gym. We didn't go into the ring, unknowing that whether he's going to be able to. We answered those questions in the gym. So those are the questions that Itauma's people are going to have to answer in the gym, and it doesn't matter what he does in the ring. If he's able to prove that he has the wherewithal to go the distance, to be up against caliber guys, to be sparring and doing well against those guys, there is no reason to believe why that can't translate into performances in the ring. So all those guys are going to be good for him to fight, and he's going to be a threat to everybody in the division. He is a threat right now.
Given his age, he could, if he continues to progress, stand to hold titles for a number of years once Oleksandr Usyk, Tyson Fury and others are out of the division. Do you see another rival emerging for him? Do you see who he'll end up rubbing shoulders with right now?
Look, there's going to always be rivals because that's what the game's all about. There's always going to be rivals. There's always going to be guys coming after you. But what he has shown me is he has the fundamental tools, and providing he stays disciplined and doesn't let that get to him, and it's easy to let the fame get to you, but if he can stay focused and remember where he came from and what it took to get here and apply that even after he's gotten here, if he can do that, he could be champion for as long as he wants, and he could become a dominant champion and a certain face of boxing, especially in the UK and on the world scene, because he's got everything going for him, especially, like I said, his fundamentals and his technique, to me, is what's going to take him around the world. Sometimes power will take you around the corner, but those fundamentals are going to take him around the world.
It seems to be right now a roadblock in the form of Dmitry Bivol's injury for a trilogy fight between him and Artur Beterbiev to take place. Artur's now keeping busy, and he's got a fight with Nicholson scheduled. But do you think we see a trilogy between the two of them, that get-back rematch that Artur gave to Dmitry? And given his age, can he still perform at a high level, considering you get older by the day?
It seems like, it just seems to me, and I don't mean to be saying this disparagingly, but it seems to me that with fighters connected to UK promoters, as soon as they win the second fight, that's it, it's over. It's done. There's no Liam Smith doesn't get the third fight with Chris Eubanks. Chantal Cameron doesn't get the third fight with Katie Taylor. Andy Ruiz never got the third fight with Anthony Joshua. It seems that they never have the third fight. You know what I mean? And that bothers me. Like, why isn't it there? Beterbiev took the fight, gave him the rematch right away, and now has to sit around and wait. You know, like, it doesn't make sense. You know, they basically want him to get old, you know, and they're going to try to drag it out. Now, I know he's injured and he had the surgery. Okay, no problem. But it's still taking a long time for that to happen. And that was supposed to materialize very quickly, get it out of the way, the trilogy, boom, and it doesn't happen. And it bothers me that it always finishes with 2 fights. It's never 3. So a British trilogy is 2 fights.
Well, the British trilogy is happening again in the form of Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn. That rematch is definitely happening. We'll see if there is a trilogy, but it's under the same terms. 160 weigh-in on the day for Chris Eubank Jr. and then no more than £10, 170 on fight night. It's happening again, Russ.
It's starting to bother me that we put all these conditions that you should want to fight the best version of the guy you're fighting. So if the rules say this is what you weigh in on this day, this is what you weigh, after that it's done, that's what the rules are for everybody. When we keep putting in these stipulations, you're just trying to get an opportunity to weaken somebody. And you know, you're going to suffer, you're going to say, oh no, he can't make the weight, and you're going to fine him. The British Boxing Board of Control is going to fine him and whatnot. You know, it just seems silly, you know, like, it just, if the fight can't be made, don't make the fight. If the fight can be made, this is the weigh-in, this is the day you weigh in on, this is what the contracted weight is, now fight. Because we should see in the ring, the fans, the people, and you as a fighter should want to see the best version of the guy you're fighting. And if the best version means he made the weight and then puts on the weight, well, that, so be it.
Very lastly, I just want to get your take as we're heading towards that big pound-for-pound clash between Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford. Which way do you sway?
Bro, listen, history has proven that smaller guys moving up in weight can have success. You know, whether it's Ray Leonard, whether it's Roy Jones, and I mention those guys because I think Terence Crawford is cut from that same cloth of superstar-type fighters. Now, of course, everyone's going to say that Canelo's the bigger man, the bigger puncher, which of course he is. He's not the bigger man in terms of stature, but certainly in stockiness. There's not going to be a physical disparity, I don't think, between the two besides the punching power. But Terence Crawford's game is based so much on skill and science and boxing IQ that I think if there's one guy who can pull this off in a dominating fashion, I think it could be Terence Crawford. And providing he's going in there, which I firmly believe he's going in there fully expecting to win and not just cash the paycheck, which of course is very lucrative. If he's going in there to win, I think he's got the tools to give Canelo all kinds of problems. And I think he has the style, the skill set to cause the upset. So I think I'm going to go with the upset here. I think I'm going to go with the upset, and I think I'm going with Crawford. I respect the power of Canelo, but I love the science and the fundamentals more of Crawford.
Getting your expert take on this, I can't remember too often times where either Canelo or Crawford have been played by cuts or bruises in their fights. And from that perspective, who do you think has the better, quote-unquote, as to just be directors to say this, skin in terms of that aspect of the game?
I think the reason you haven't seen that is because they're both extremely talented defensive fighters that don't get hit a lot, and they know exactly what to do on the inside, and they know how to slip and roll, and that's why you haven't seen that. And I don't think it's going to be a factor in this fight.
From the two defeats that are on Canelo Alvarez's ledger, that being Floyd Mayweather and Dmitry Bivol, which can Terence Crawford take the most of a game plan from and affect in his fight with Canelo?
Well, there's certainly the skill set that Floyd used against Canelo, but Canelo was a 21-year-old baby at that point, and they took that fight more from an experience perspective, and that Canelo, which should be an example to other fighters in the world, learn from that. You know, you can take fights, it doesn't matter if you lose, and you can learn from it, and look how great he became after after that fight, after being in the ring with somebody like a Floyd Mayweather. But I think the recipe, I think Bivol had the recipe to beat Canelo soundly, and he was able to execute it. And that was, again, with simple fundamentals: 1-2, don't get hit, step back, boom, boom, bang, bang. Just be able to keep up that pace for Canelo instead of thinking you're going to crumble under Canelo's power, which a lot of fighters did before. He didn't. He didn't worry about loading up on punches, similar to the way he beat Beterbiev. He just had the engine and kept working, kept busy, didn't get hit, kept busy. When you're not getting hit and you can keep busy, you become a hard man to beat. So let's go back to your initial question, what you opened with, Shakur Stevenson. When you're not getting hit and you're busy, you're a hard man to beat.
That's Abel Sanchez, who obviously had Golovkin in the fights with Canelo Alvarez. I said, can Terence Crawford take it to Canelo the same way that Gennady Golovkin took it to Canelo? He said no, but there's also the school of thought that you had Artur Beterbiev, who never said that Canelo Alvarez would want to take on Artur Beterbiev, but there was apparently some talks that fight could have happened. Do you think Crawford can take it to Canelo like Golovkin did?
I don't think he has to. Golovkin had to take it to him because Golovkin needed to land that power shot. He had to take it. He wasn't going to be the slick boxer. But I think it's fair to say that Crawford is more of the scientist in the ring. He's going to be slick. He's going to make him miss. He's going to counter him, going to spin around him. He's going to make it awkward for him. He's going to turn southpaw on him. He's going to fight from both sides. It's a completely different style. You can't turn around and tell Terence Crawford to have that come forward so-called Mexican style, that Golovkin used to say, I'm coming forward like a steamroller. That's not his style. That would play into Canelo's hands. And I don't think Crawford's going to do that.
Let me bring it back to Moses Itauma. In the same way that Canelo went and touched greatness against Floyd Mayweather but fell short, I know it's not a one-for-one because Canelo had so many more fights than how Moses Itauma had and fought ex-champions and such, but is there a school of thought to say that Moses Itauma might just throw himself in with Oleksandr Usyk to touch greatness and learn from it?
You know what? If you answered the questions in the gym that he can do this, he can do that, and you go in there thinking, what's the worst that can happen, and can we survive that tempo, those punches, are we able to do it? And you answer yourself yes to that. And even if you lose a decision, but you showed great defense, you didn't allow Usyk to hit you the way he hit Dubois in the last fight, right? You're able to get away with that. I would say yes. I would say yes. He's young. Well, what do you got to lose? What do you got to lose? Unless you think that, unless there's a frailty that you know about. But if not, based on what I'm seeing, I'd say, yeah, what do you have to lose going against this guy? You have everything to learn. And I think a good example of that is Dubois, because look what he did after losing to Usyk, right? He did well. So
very, very final thing, because you mentioned Daniel Dubois. He's now made the choice to leave Don Charles, and we believe he's joining Tony Sims. That's a number of trainers he's moved to since he left Martin Bowers, I believe, when he turned pro. Just your thoughts on a fighter changing trainers and how it worked with Don from your point of view.
Look, some guys change. I don't know. I don't know enough of the inner workings of the camp to be able to comment on that from a place of knowledge, right? It's only my opinion. I don't know what's going on in the gym. But from the outside looking in, seeing the results that Dubois had, especially in the first fight, even with Usyk, where he stayed in there for 9 rounds. He was in there. It was a competitive fight. He wasn't winning, but he was in there against maybe an all-time great, definitely an all-time great, but maybe the greatest in the heavyweight division. And he comes back and has 3 outstanding wins, including the most devastating win against AJ. You'd have to think that Don Charles played a part in that. You'd have to think that, right? So I'm just a little confused as to why. What was wrong with the chemistry? What was up with that? But I don't have those answers. I'm not privy enough to that information. But some fights, there are some fighters who change trainers lots of times, and there are others who stay loyal and stay with the same trainer who got them there. So I don't think that there's a perfect recipe for everybody, but it sure looked from the outside that Don played a significant role in bringing Dubois back after the Usyk fight, in which Dubois was generally dejected after losing. It almost looked like it's the end of my career, it's over. And he came back from that, and I think that speaks volumes.
Ever insightful, Russ. Have rival gloves will travel. Thank you for speaking to Seconds Out. Much appreciated.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers.